The Caribbean horizon glows orange as the Venezuelan Navy moves in formation along the coast. Warships cut through the calm waters, their radar dishes rotating under the morning sun. On the shoreline, soldiers in camouflage uniforms load heavy artillery, their faces stern and deliberate. It's a display meant not just for training, but for sending a message. That message comes from Caracas, where Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino Lopez has made a rare and forceful declaration. Standing before the national flag and surrounded by senior commanders, he speaks directly into the cameras. His tone is defiant. They can send I don't know how many CIA agents on covert operations from any corner of the nation, and any attempt will fail, just as they have failed until now. The statement lands like a thunderclap. Padrino is referring to reports that US President Donald Trump has authorized covert action against Venezuela, an escalation of Washington's long-running standoff with the socialist government of Nicolás Maduro. For years, the United States has accused Caracas of authoritarianism, drug trafficking, and human rights abuses. Venezuela, in turn, has accused Washington of sabotage, economic, political, and now, according to its defense leadership, possibly military. On the coastline near Puerto Cabello, Venezuela's largest naval base, soldiers fire short-range missiles over the Caribbean. The thunder of the launch echoes through the valley. Plumes of smoke rise over the water as targets are struck in simulated combat. This, officials say, is a test of readiness against foreign intervention. From the decks of patrol vessels, sailors man their stations, scanning the horizon through binoculars. Drones hover overhead, capturing aerial footage of the drills, a symbol of technological self-reliance, despite years of crippling sanctions. In his remarks, Padrino Lopez expands on the accusation. We know that the CIA is present not only in Venezuela, but everywhere in the world where there are embassies of the United States. The CIA will be operating there. It's not the first time Venezuelan authorities have accused the United States of espionage. But what makes this declaration different is the timing, coming just days after intelligence reports leaked in Washington, suggesting renewed focus on Venezuela's internal stability. As the exercises continue, the military's message is unmistakable. Venezuela will not be caught off guard. Overhead, fighter jets trace white lines across the sky. On the ground, columns of armored vehicles move in tight formation along the coastal roadways. The drills are officially described as defensive deterrence operations, but analysts say they also serve a political purpose to rally domestic unity and project strength abroad. Inside Caracas, the atmosphere is tense but controlled. Billboards carry slogans defending the nation's sovereignty. State television runs patriotic footage, soldiers saluting, children waving the flag, and the defense minister's speech replayed on a loop. At the presidential palace of Miraflores, President Nicolás Maduro reportedly followed the exercises closely. While he did not appear publicly alongside his defense minister, sources inside the government describe his instructions as clear. Show that Venezuela will not be intimidated outside the palace. Supporters gather with banners reading "Patria o muerte," fatherland or death. They chant slogans of resistance, echoing a narrative that has defined Venezuela's political identity for decades. In Washington, US officials have declined to comment directly on the Venezuelan defense minister's accusations. But sources familiar with US policy say the Trump administration's approach to Caracas remains one of maximum pressure. Sanctions continue to target Venezuelan oil exports, government officials, and the state-owned petroleum company PDVSA, once the lifeblood of the nation's economy. The impact has been severe. Hyperinflation, food shortages, and mass migration have reshaped Venezuela's society. Yet, within the military establishment, loyalty to the government remains firm, reinforced through years of ideological training and promises of protection from prosecution. At the Ministry of Defense, Padrino Lopez's speech carries both defiance and warning. The general, a career officer known for his disciplined demeanor, leans forward as he speaks. Any attempt will fail. The words are delivered slowly, deliberately, the cadence of a man addressing both his troops and his adversaries. He recalls previous attempts to destabilize Venezuela, referencing the failed coup attempts and economic blockades that the government attributes to the United States and its allies. We have seen every tactic, he says, but our people stand ready. As he speaks, the screen cuts back to the exercises. Soldiers jogging along the beach at sunset, their weapons silhouetted against the fading light. A helicopter circles above the coastline, dropping flares that ignite in a burst of white fire. The reflection dances across the waves, merging with the horizon. The symbolism is clear. Venezuela sees itself surrounded but unbroken. Throughout the broadcast, state media anchors repeat a central theme that the country is not isolated, but part of a growing network of allies resisting US interventionism. In recent months, Venezuela has strengthened defense ties with Russia, China, and Iran, signing agreements for training, intelligence sharing, and equipment maintenance. Military analysts point out that many of the weapons seen in the exercises, including the Buk surface-to-air missile system and the Orlan-10 reconnaissance drone, were supplied by Moscow. The message is one of deterrence. Even if Washington acts, Caracas will not stand alone. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens in Caracas react with mixed emotions. Some express pride, saying the show of strength is necessary to protect the homeland. Others, weary from years of hardship, worry that renewed confrontation with the United States could bring more sanctions and further isolation. At the Simón Bolívar Square, a retired teacher watching the televised speech shakes her head. "We don't need more enemies," she says. "We need medicine, food, and peace." The voiceover returns to the Defense Ministry. Padrino stands flanked by his generals, each wearing olive green uniforms with gold insignia. He raises his hand slightly and declares, "The Venezuelan armed forces are ready to defend every inch of this territory. We are a people of peace, but also a people of courage." The crowd of officers applauds. The camera zooms in on their faces, solemn, proud, unwavering. As the minutes pass, the program transitions into analysis. Political commentators describe Padrino's remarks as both a military statement and a political signal, aimed at demonstrating unity within the armed forces at a time of external pressure. Experts from Latin American security think tanks note that Venezuela has been conducting more frequent coastal exercises, particularly in the Caribbean, where oil reserves and shipping lanes make it strategically important. The recent drills, they say, were not coincidental. They were planned well in advance, but their broadcast now amplifies their diplomatic impact. For the United States, the challenge remains how to maintain pressure on Maduro's government without triggering open conflict. Covert operations, if they exist, would mark a new escalation, one reminiscent of Cold War-era interventions in Latin America. In that context, Padrino's warning resonates beyond Venezuela's borders. It's not just a message to Washington, but also to neighboring countries, some of which have aligned with US policy. The Venezuelan defense minister's words, "Any attempt will fail," are meant to reinforce deterrence through confidence and defiance. As night falls over Caracas, soldiers stand guard at the gates of the military command center. The city hums with the low sound of traffic, and from the hills, the lights of the capital stretch out like a constellation. On national television, the broadcast closes with patriotic music and the red, blue, and yellow flag waving over a formation of troops. The narrator's final words echo Padrino's. "We know the CIA is present, but Venezuela remains vigilant." In the days ahead, the statement is expected to reverberate across international diplomatic circles. Washington's silence will be watched closely, while Caracas frames the moment as proof of its sovereignty under siege. For Venezuela's leadership, this is more than a security declaration. It is a rallying cry, a reaffirmation of identity forged through confrontation. For the rest of the world, it's a reminder that the tensions between Washington and Caracas are far from over, and that the Caribbean once again finds itself on the front line of geopolitical rivalry.